One of the things that has been absolutely heartbreaking about 2020 has been to see how our fellow Australians have been so happy to close the door on each other. To say that if I'm okay, it doesn't matter if you're not okay. The people who have hid behind the border politics of some of our lowest rate politicians. And we have only in the past week seen scenes like these, when people have been reunited at airports around the country after the border lockdowns that were necessary about places like Victoria, but unnecessary about places like South Australia. Your everyday Australian who has done nothing wrong deserves the right to be able to cross a border, to hug the person that they love or to see the person that they have missed. It is the priority of government to facilitate that free movement each and every day. Because while for some it has been fun to say how good's Queensland without the tourists, how good's WA without all those awful people back east, your Medicare card didn't stop working in 2020. Your Medicare card is paid for by everyone else in Australia. Your passport, not that you need it at the moment, is still something that 25 million people in Australia can be united behind. We're united under our national flag, our national anthem, our national government. Let us avoid the dark old days of falling into the nonsense where state first, country second. It is country first every time. You just saw that with Frank Lowy and his extraordinary Australian life. This is a country where free movement is necessary, where for many of us we have been a little bit like the frog in the pot, where we didn't realise it was getting hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter until eventually it was boiling. And it was killing the very things about our country that we have taken for granted. It is time to take them back. But amazingly, despite the absurdity of South Australia in the past couple of weeks, and yes, I'll move on from South Australia, but the absurdity that something that could be dealt with at the Crossroads Hotel in New South Wales when it was just 40 cases saw an entire country shut down its borders over 20-something cases in South Australia. In the Financial Review this weekend, Philip Curry had an astonishing statistic. It was an opinion poll that was put together by a research mob, JPS. It says almost 60% of people believe that they should shut to any state with just 25 cases. 25 cases. And 3/4 say that having 100 or fewer is a reason to close the border. Now, you know and I know that while coronavirus is very serious to those who have comorbidities, in my case, obesity, smoker. But for those that are older, we all know what the risks are. But the idea that the virus is lurking around every corner and that 25 million people, as long as they're not you, are potentially the ones that will bring it to your doorstep is garbage. Even in Queensland, the Chief Health Officer, and you never see this on the 6pm news, but she said it, there will never be a second wave in Queensland. Why? Because they have contact tracing. That means they will be able to know the difference between a raging bushfire and a grass fire started with a cigarette. They don't have a good contact tracing system in Western Australia, which is why they're hiding behind a border being closed. And of course, there's an election coming up in March, of which McGowan will win almost every seat, because we know that, as they used to say about Trump and truth, coronavirus and common sense, they don't quite go together, do they? But it is extraordinary to me about the hair trigger that our country sits on right now. A hair trigger that, yes, while they want as many people to be able to get together in Christmas, what about January? What about February? What about March? What about the Easter long weekend next year? What about the school holidays? Instead, we sort of have to live on this day-by-day, double-check, refresh the website. Is there any bad news? And in Victoria, don't forget, the entire lockdown that hurt so many for so long, there is nothing written in the legislation about what would trigger it again. 2 cases? 200 cases? In New Zealand, they shut down Auckland and 1.6 million people for 4 cases. The entire country's state borders went up with 20 cases in South Australia. And according to this research, the majority of people are okay with that? It's time for us to wake up. We are the frog in the pot. If at the start of the year I had told you that 60% of the country thought that if 20 people got sick, we would slam the borders shut, and you know every time they get shut, it takes weeks and weeks and months for them to reopen. This is bad for business, which is bad for employment, which is bad for you.